Hello, Internet, and happy birthday to the Nintendo Switch 2. I can't believe it's been a whole year since you were first introduced. How does it feel? Aw, you have such a way with words. It's been a pretty eventful year for gaming, and nowhere has that been more evident than with the launch of the Switch 2. This thing has been the talk of the town, sometimes in positive contexts, and sometimes not. While I certainly don't think the Switch 2 is a perfect console, so far I've been extremely satisfied with what I've played and the overall library of software available. At the very least, there are reasons to purchase a Switch 2. But how many reasons are there exactly? Let's take a closer look at the Switch 2's first year on the market and see for ourselves. Starting out with the launch month, we had quite a bit of heavy hitters in terms of third-party support, along with a few first-party titles. I've talked about Mario Kart World and Deltarune before, so let's look at a few others. There are Switch 2 editions of some Switch 1 multi-platform games that ran a little better, but we also saw some stuff that would have been inconceivable to run on that original hardware, one of my favorites being Street Fighter VI. I have pretty minimal experience with the Street Fighter series, all things considered, but I really enjoyed the style and gameplay of 6. There's a ton of freedom and customization, and it's great that it's spreading to more platforms. And it's great that this isn't. Alright, I can't act like I didn't get some enjoyment out of the Nintendo Switch 2 Welcome Tour, although I certainly don't think it's for everyone. It's a tour of the Nintendo Switch 2, and that's basically all it is. I've never been much of a specs guy, but the way every single feature of the hardware is communicated is honestly really engaging, and there's a shockingly wide array of content to dive into, with each piece of plastic getting time to shine. Sure, it would have been nice if it was a free pack-in title and not $10 on the eShop, but it could have been a whole lot worse. For what it is, Welcome Tour is a nice, cozy little way to learn about the thing you just bought. And this is a way to learn about a thing nobody bought. Nintendo's had games from quite a few of their old consoles and handhelds available through Nintendo Switch Online, with the Switch 2 exclusively gaining GameCube titles at launch. And as I've played the first three more, my opinions on them have shifted a bit. Wind Waker started to lose me after a while, but I really started to get the hang of Soul Calibur 2 and especially F-Zero GX. It's difficult to gain such high speeds while maintaining your control and not careening into oblivion, but figuring out how to do so is invigorating. I do really hope that we get a proper new F-Zero game, and if we do, I'll buy it. For the time being though, there's always monkey games to buy. Alright, Donkey Kong Bonanza. This was one of my most anticipated Switch 2 games as soon as it was announced, so much so that I put $5 down for it when I got my system at launch, only to get a copy for my birthday. Still though, it definitely didn't disappoint. The Super Mario Odyssey developers already knew how to make platformer movement fun, and they made things feel even better by adding the ability to wreck the environments. It's super satisfying to bash your way through levels, and there's a ton of stuff to collect that all affects the main gameplay in different ways. I had a lot of fun with the Bonanza forms, and especially Pauline. Cool to hear her fully voiced. And they even threw in a 3D model editor called DK Artist. You start with a shaped rock, and you can carve, extend, smoothen, and paint it into whatever you can think of. Take a look, it's a self-portrait. Nintendo definitely made sure there weren't any starving artists this month. We were eating well. Yes, Mario Paint was re-released for the first time on Nintendo Classics this month, along with Mario Strikers. The Joy-Con 2 mouse mode works great with Mario Paint, and both are still great spin-offs. In comparison, Shadow Labyrinth caught my attention as soon as it was unveiled. A search-action-adventure game based on a gritty reimagining of Pac-Man that I thought looked really interesting. And when I picked it up, I don't know, I thought the controls and atmosphere were fun, but the world didn't really feel anything like Pac-Man most of the time, or really grip me that much. It might be the art style, I would have preferred a pixel art aesthetic. This month also saw the release of a demo for Square Enix's latest HD 2D game, The Adventures of Elliot the Millennium Tales. I've never really gotten into these games, but I decided to give this one a try, and I gotta say I had a lot of fun with it. It's an action RPG with really solid controls, and even though I always figured the HD 2D style wasn't my thing, I did think it was really beautiful. It made me want to try the others a lot. And I wasn't the only one trying new stuff out, because Nintendo came out with a brand new IP this month. Bet you forgot about this one, huh? With Chibi Robo coming to NSO, it was a big month for robot games, and Drag X Drive was made to show off dual mouse gaming and very little else. For what it's worth, I did have fun playing it, but didn't feel like revisiting it. We also got a pretty notable Switch 2 edition for Kirby and the Forgotten Land. Most Switch 2 editions so far have simply shown off the system's new capabilities, but this one adds some substantial new content. And we got a game that feels more like Pac-Man than Shadow Labyrinth. Here we have Scrambled Egg, a part of the Arcade Archives 2 series. It's a maze game very similar to Pac-Man, but you can push eggs around the maze to attack your enemies. And speaking of the maze with no exit, the Exit 8 was a random pick that really impressed me. It's such a simple idea, just continue on or turn back depending on whether anomalies are present. But the constant and varying levels of uncanniness make you genuinely feel insane. I'm sure most people waiting for Hollow Knight Silksong were familiar with that feeling at some point. We got a Nintendo Direct for Mario's 40th anniversary this month, which revealed a lot of big first and third-party games. New Mario Tennis and Yoshi, 2 new Pokemon games, and the newest Resident Evil day and date with other consoles. Not as scary as this. Yeah, the Virtual Boy of all consoles was announced for Nintendo Classics, complete with a massive stand replicating the original system. That stand fully sold out in pre-orders. What world are we living in? At least Silksong is finally out, and it was definitely worth the wait. Hollow Knight already looked and felt great, and this built on top of that to make one of the best search actions out there. Shadow Labyrinth can't catch a break. Pac-Man World 2 Repack came out at the end of the month and improved on the prior entry in a lot of similar ways. Not only is there more camera control, but Pac-Man is fully voiced by his World 3 actor. Never thought I'd hear him again. I actually played a few platformer remakes this fall, surprisingly enough. I tried the original Yooka-Laylee a while ago, and it didn't quite click with me. It was made by the same developers as the old Banjo-Kazooie, and retains quite a few aspects of that game that don't quite fit in with modern standards. And Yooka-Replayley set out to fix that. You've got all your moves available from the start, a full map screen, and the levels really feel full of things to do. If you've ever felt like trying Yooka-Laylee, this is the best way to do so. I also had a lot of fun with the Mortal Kombat Legacy Collection. It's similar to Atari 50 with a large amount of games and documentary content, but also includes online play with rollback netcode, which I've heard is good. Yeah, I don't understand online mechanics that much, but I do understand Luigi's Mansion. I'm glad this got re-released, especially during the end of October. It's a perfect little Halloween game to play through. Of course, most of these were re-releases of games on other platforms. We need something exclusive to the Switch too, like racing around as a hamster. Rick! That works. We got a few new games this month, including a new SpongeBob game, Titans of the Tide, but we all know what the big one was. Kirby Air Riders. Masahiro Sakurai's return to the first series he ever created after over 20 years, and it is incredible. The controls feel super snappy and satisfying, all the modes are fully fleshed out with a ton of stuff to unlock, and there's a full story campaign with multiple branching paths and a story that ties back to the earlier Sakurai games. And it doesn't just lift from the games he made either. There are characters from nearly the entire series here. They acknowledged Rainbow Curse in a substantial way for the first time in over a decade. I was so happy to see that. If you're planning on getting a Switch 2 or have one already, I wholeheartedly recommend this game. It took a while to get a sequel to Kirby Air Ride, but it was more than worth the wait and heavily praised accordingly. Unfortunately, not every long-awaited sequel this year was so lucky. Oh, Metroid Prime 4, you poor, poor thing. People were so excited for you for so long, and now they want nothing to do with you. It might be because I'm not the most familiar with the Prime games, but I got a lot of enjoyment out of this one. I've played 2D Metroid, and it still feels like that, but in first person. Samus's psychic abilities made for some interesting puzzles, and Miles McKenzie really didn't break the immersion for me. If anything, he made the world feel alive. The mouse controls also worked really well for this game, and I could say the same for the Switch 2's version of The Elder Scrolls V: Skyrim. This was actually my first experience with the game, and I can see why it took off so much. Skyrim is such a rich and fleshed out fantasy world with so many different species and monsters, and you can explore it in any way you want. What I think made it so popular was how it felt simultaneously casual and hardcore, and we even got to wrap up the year with Wario. I never expected Wario World to come back, and I definitely recommend it. It's one of the most insane games Nintendo's ever made, while still being easy to play through. I hope you clear your backlog by the end of the year, because 2026 came out swinging with some massive heavy hitters. To start off, we had Fire Emblem Path of Radiance on Nintendo Classics, the first console entry in the series to come overseas. It's also the debut of fan-favorite character Ike, and still a solid tactical RPG. But the big one for January was Final Fantasy VII Remake Intergrade. One of the most famous remakes of one of the most famous JRPGs of all time, which infamously skipped out Nintendo's hardware, was finally here. I've played the original PS1 version before, but the remake feels like a completely different game. It fleshes out the world way more, and the battles are action-based like they were in Kingdom Hearts, which I'm also a fan of. If I had a nickel for every remake Square Enix released for the Switch 2 this year, I guess I could buy a postage stamp? We didn't get a regular Nintendo Direct this month like we usually do, but we did get a partner showcase that showed off a lot of big releases. Pragmata, Indiana Jones, and even an exclusive with Orbitals inspired by 80s anime. And with the actual releases, not only was there a brand new take on Dragon Quest VII with a unique art style, but two pretty big collections. The Super Bomberman Collection and the Disney Afternoon Collection. These two are packed with content, featuring games that don't get re-released all that frequently and are frankly perfect for Nintendo consoles. They have handy quality of life features and plenty of bonus goodies as well. There were even a few Switch 2 editions for indie games, like the aforementioned Hollow Knight, along with my favorite game that I will never shut up about, Braid. Honestly, I'm just glad that this game is still available. Of course, we can't forget about the big first-party release this month. Anybody up for tennis? The Mario sports games have had it rough for a while, but I came out of Mario Tennis Fever really enjoying it. The Fever brackets add just enough variety to make the game engaging without completely upending the core mechanics. Speaking of which, this was the first time I really got into a tennis video game on a mechanical level, which was helped by the story mode. I wouldn't recommend that mode to everyone though, it's still basically a drawn-out tutorial. But something big happened at the end of the month with Pokémon. Not only was XD Gale of Darkness coming to Nintendo Classics, but Generation 10 was unveiled for the following year. And something even bigger happened in March. The Apocalypse. Pokémon Pokopia was the game that sold a lot of people on the Switch too, and I sunk a lot of time into it. Coming from the developers of Dragon Quest Builders, it basically puts you in charge of rebuilding the world of Pokémon. What I really like about the game is that despite all of the things to do, it never feels overwhelming because you're encouraged to go at your own pace. All the Pokémon are fun to talk to, and every little task is super satisfying. I also gave Virtua Fighter 5 a shot. While I might not be as into this series as Street Fighter, Mortal Kombat, or even Fatal Fury, I can really appreciate what it did for 3D graphics, and this entry feels really solid to play. And we can't forget about the Nintendo Switch 2 edition of Mario Wonder. The boss fights against the Koopalings make the game feel much more complete, and I spent a lot of time playing the multiplayer minigames with friends. That being said, I had a bit of trouble coming up with games to talk about in April. I spent most of the month playing the new Tomodachi Life, but since it doesn't have a Switch 2 edition, I had to find something else. The new Denpa Men was decently fun, but still a pretty basic free-to-play game. But then I found Pragmata. This was a pretty notable AAA release from Capcom that was announced over half a decade ago as one of Capcom's first new franchises in a while. It really caught my attention, and I wasn't disappointed. Sure, the dialogue is nothing to write home about, but I was invested in the gameplay here more than in any other shooter. It uses more buttons at once than in any other game I've played, and it keeps you engaged quite effectively. And finally, we're in the month of May. It was quite a bit bigger than April, not only because of the releases, but because of an announcement that caught a lot of people off guard. Yes, we finally have a new Star Fox game on the way. Well, new in quotations. I don't mind that it's a Lylat Wars game, but I would have preferred a new title. It still looks pretty cool, the camera mode is neat, and it's only $50. There were also some pretty cool games like Indiana Jones and the Great Circle and Bubsy 4D, but the game I decided to spend my time with this month was Yoshi and the Mysterious Book, the first Yoshi game in 6 years. It might not be as in-depth or challenging as the original Yoshi's Island or even Woolly World, but it was really satisfying to just figure out what each creature could do, filling out the pages and giving them unique names. So that was more or less the entire first year of the Switch 2. There were a lot of ups and downs, but overall I was pretty happy with the software lineup. I tried to get out of my comfort zone a bit and found some new favorites. If I had to give some points of critique, I do wish it was easier to buy physical games, because aside from the concerns about ownership, it's annoying to have to delete and re-download games when your storage is filled up. And game key cards don't really solve that either. They still have all the issues of a digital game with the added detractor of needing to insert the card to play. They're about as useful as a self-propelled bike that moves slower than walking speed. Ow!